I like Undertale. Says me and millions of people around the world. And how can you not like it? It's one of the most unique RPG games of our generation with one of the most iconic soundtracks and some of the most iconic characters in all of fiction. And after almost 10 years of this game being out, it is still wildly talked about to this day. Even if that's mostly due to the massive success of Deltarune, people can't get enough of these games. And if there's one fandom that can rival Minecraft for being creative yet depraved, it is the Undertale fandom. There is so much passion and love put into Undertale, and the community reciprocates that passion in so many ways. By creating fan mods, new boss fights, or creating entirely new animated music videos, and then different versions of that same music video, and then animated shows. But you get the point. There are a lot of ideas always spun around with this fandom. But of course, there are some people that just don't quite hit the mark when they're given creative freedom. And the Undertale fandom is no exception to this. As in 2016, a little animated short called Megalomaniac was released on the Camila Cuevas YouTube channel, and if you somehow don't know where this leads, this was the start of an AU called Glitchtale. I guarantee that some of you watching just got shivers from hearing those notes. To put into perspective on how long it actually has been since 2016, let me remind you of a couple important things from that year. Donald Trump was elected president for the first time, MLG videos were extremely popular on the internet, Pokémon Go came out, Deadpool 1 came out, Captain America Civil War came out, Stranger Things came out, Zootopia came out. Musically, the predecessor to TikTok became popular, the bottle flip challenge was popular, Harambe died, and 2016 was the year before Fortnite Battle Royale would strike the nation and millions of socially inept children. I was one of them. So you might be wondering, why am I talking about this show if I'm only going to bash it? Well, two reasons. One, I like talking about indie animations. And two, I watched this shit when I was like in 5th grade, and a decent amount of time has passed, where I somewhat gained consciousness and learned what media literacy is and realized, holy shit, this is kinda ass. And this isn't the case of me looking back at something where I can look at it with nostalgia. This is just actually ass. So what's a better use of my time than making a video talking about things that serve zero purpose? I love my hobbies. Anyways, let's get into it. I am aware of the controversies Camila has been in, and I will not be discussing them in this video. If you do want a full in-depth review on what's been going on, go watch this video by Definitely Bored Oranges. I don't want to talk about controversies on this channel unless I can make jokes about them. I just want to do a review on a show that I once liked when I was younger, and just leave it at that. Glitchtale has 2 seasons and an upcoming 3rd season that is completely irrelevant since the series is basically over and it will be a prequel. And this prequel only exists just so Camila can try to cover up the inconsistencies with the writing with even more inconsistencies. But to sum up the series, we start out with what seems to be a normal genocide route with Frisk versus Sans. Eventually, Chara takes Frisk's place in the fight, and before Chara can kill Sans, Frisk comes in and gives their soul to Sans. So, before this was even officially an AU, this scene already makes no sense. But there are going to be a lot of those points in this video, so I'll explain it when we get to the proper review. Anyways, Sans beats Chara and resets. We see Sans asking Frisk if they want to go to Grillby's, but as he takes his shortcut, Frisk doesn't go and they wind up in the Gaster room. Gaster forces them to fight, Sans shows up, Frisk gives them their soul, more fighting, Sans beats Gaster and resets again. Sans tells Frisk that they have to stop resetting because something bad might happen as Chara comes back and kills enough monsters to take control of the reset button with determination. This goes against what the game tells you because the person with the most determination in the underground can manipulate the timelines. If Chara here has no soul and some determination, it still wouldn't be enough to rival Frisk. And canonically, the entire population of the underground will only equal 1 human soul as shown in Asriel's transformation into the god of hyperdeath. Anyways, Clarence throws Frisk into the determination extractor, Flowey goes to tell Sans about this, and if you couldn't believe what I'm about to say, they fight. They actually lose this fight, and Chalk gets the determination. They bring back Gaster, acting like he didn't just try to run the ones. They give Flowey the human souls to become Omega Flowey, fight again, God help me. Frisk gets the determination back somehow and gives their soul to Flowey so he can become the god of hyperdeath. Chlorine goes on a rant about how this is all Frisk's fault for the genocide and how they did it with their own free will, which is the only time the writing actually understands the game. These two fight, hug it out by the end, and destroy the barrier. And Ketamine dies again. Frisk destroys the reset button, and that's the end of Season 1. Season 2 starts off with Frisk giving us some exposition on how everything's going so far. Monsters and humans have been living peacefully together. Undying, Gaster, and Asgore gotta do some shit. Frisk is responsible for dealing with the monster KKK, led by Camilla's human OC, Jessica Gray. She's pretty much Undertale Hitler, as as this frame shows damning evidence. Frisk eventually runs into this girl named Betty, and Sans and Azrael immediately feel something off about her, and it turns out their suspicions were correct, and Sans fucking dies. Jessica third parties the fight, Asgore and Papyrus get thrown into prison, Alphys dies, and no one cares about that. Azrael dies, Betty causes World War III by gooping all over the place, Sans gets revived and dies again, Azrael gets revived, Frisk and Cockroach switch places, which totally wouldn't f up a lot of things in the story. Jessica goes to heaven for being racist, Culinary frees Azrael from Betty's control, Gasser beats the living shit out of Betty, straight up giving her the pig treatment, Chara beats Betty, and the world is saved. If you've played Undertale or seen anything online regarding the characters, then you pretty much know how every character is supposed to act. So I'll skip over talking about every single individual character because Jesus Christ, there are a lot. So I'm only going to cover certain characters that actually have involvement in the story and not every single side character. First and foremost, we should start off with Frisk. This genderless child is possibly the most vile giraffe to exist. Frisk is a reflection of the player's actions, and unlike the actual game, Frisk is never held accountable for their actions. Mainly because the one character that does judge you based on your previous actions is dead or unconscious for about 80% of the show. Frisk is the one responsible for every disaster everyone faces due to them glitching the timeline. Chara was only evil because Frisk dumped all their hate and aggression into them. And they lied to Sans about not wanting the reset, which really fucks with them because he was finally given the chance to move forward. Also, while we're talking about Sans, Camilla decided to change the fact that Sans can't remember resets. While he shouldn't remember resets, in this version he can. But that's because he got access to determination, so in this context it makes sense. Until it doesn't, but we'll get to that point later. There really isn't much for me to complain about Sans, as he still acts like himself and still shows the existential fear of being forever stuck in one place. Azrael seems like he's regressed as a character because the writing decides to contradict the events of Undertale, where Azrael blatantly says that Chara wasn't really the greatest friend and that you were the friend he was looking for. Yet apparently, Chara is the only person that he will listen to and try to please. Toriel has regressed as a character where she's still haunted by the past and fear of losing Frisk and how she's lost her children and the other 6 humans. And since this is a pacifist run, Frisk would have gotten her to move on and convinced her to set her fears aside to let you pass from the ruins into Snowden. Asgore, in this route, shouldn't really have a reason to befriend humans. In the actual story of Undertale, he is stuck in the past and feels morally obligated to set his people free this one way by gathering the souls of those that fall into the underground, until you as the player can provide a positive outcome for both parties. Asgore actually never even meets Frisk in this timeline until after the barrier is broken. Also, Asgore is forgiven for murdering 6 children. While this is an initial conflict in the beginning of the show, for the convenience of the plot, he is pardoned, and the one person that actually had a genuine problem with this just so happens to never talk with him again. Gaster may as well be bipolar in this show. He goes from being collected to lashing out at everyone. He's also one of the few characters to have an arc in the story. After Sans' death, Gaster is justifiably angry at Jessica, who assisted Betty in his murder. This is the start of his arc of trying to forgive her for what she's done. This is a pretty good idea until you realize Gaster is written to be the unreasonable one. So in his and Jessica's final moments together, he is the one apologizing to her. Let me repeat myself. The guy who is justifiably angry at the person who got his son killed is in the wrong. Undyne is another character who has an arc, but she's just depressed for the entire season because she accidentally killed Alphys. So she comes to terms with that and starts feeling determined again by the end of the show. Jessica is a human OC Camilla made for the show. And guys, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. This show is one of those shows where the OC can't do no wrong and his power scaled to shit. Jessica starts off as an antagonist and becomes an anti-hero when she seeks redemption and forgiveness for assisting in killing Sans. Before this happens, she gets a crowd of people killed out of spite. And they never bring this up again. Also, it seems like Jessica can't decide if she will be racist or not. In the beginning, she hates monsters, but after Betty attacks her, she's suddenly no longer racist. So Betty literally beats the racism out of her. Now, while we're on the topic of our pride and joy of the entire show, Betty is just kind of a really lame villain, where all she does is just kill and attempts to aura farm. Jokes aside, Betty really is just the definition of evil, and is shown absolutely zero redeemable traits in the entire show. Why is this a problem? Maybe because some of the core themes of the source material is forgiveness and redemption. So when you remove those aspects from the story that builds off the original game, you lost me. Literally everyone in Undertale can be forgiven. No matter what you've done or who you were, you can be forgiven, because in the end, these are all your decisions and you have to be the one to accept what you've done and learn to move forward. Flowey at one point was the most powerful being in the underground, and no one forced him to commit the atrocities he's known for. He did it with his own free will just to feel something. And you can still find forgiveness in him, him, as even he understands what length he's gone through just to wind up in the same spot. Betty literally can't be redeemed because of the factor of hate fueling her, and literally only existing just to destroy. So if anything, Betty isn't even an actual character. It is just a mindless thing set out to do one task, which is exactly what we get in the finale. So if Betty isn't a human or a monster, and is just this thing, what is she? Well, guess what? We're actually never told what she is. From what I can gather from the show, she is just pure magic with the sole purpose to make sure humans and monsters can ever live in peace. So if anything, it doesn't feel like there's an actual consciousness behind this character, which makes her feel even less like an actual character and just extremely bland in one note. Also, another gripe I have with this character is that she just pulls a new power out of her ass every episode. In the beginning of season 2, you can kind of accept that she can bring out new powers as you're just starting to learn about the character, but when she starts doing this every episode to just like destroy any power scaling against any other character, then this just keeps bleeding into her being more of a blank planet buster. Also, a problem within a problem, the way Betty uses her powers is very inconsistent. Betty's shtick is that she can show people their worst fears and to undetermine anyone's determination. I think an example of this is when Frisk and Betty are fighting and Betty starts showing Frisk their worst fears, which makes their hearts start to lose color. But seeing Toriel get slashed and Chara disappearing doesn't feel like fear at all. If anything, it looks like guilt. Hell, she does it again, this time to Toriel, to show Asgore killing all the children. This would work, kind of in the context of the story, if Betty didn't explicitly say that Toriel is feeling guilty, for f***'s sake. Hell, it doesn't even have to involve your worst fears. She could just make illusions now. She just manipulates Papyrus into dropping steel beams onto people. The only time this power actually worked was in the second to last episode, when Papyrus sees Gaster disappear in his hands and is about to die, and is left at a point where he is absolutely helpless. Also, why does Betty have powers unrelated to fear? She could just straight up teleport. Betty was shown in previous fights that she had to run away a couple times, but then she all of a sudden gets the ability to fucking teleport. She could just take other people's abilities, and then when she's on the brink of death, she just pulls bullshit out of her ass, as if she couldn't be more of a stereotypical OC than ever. To make her even worse, after she's defeated by Gaster, hate takes over her corpse, and some fucking how it harnesses all the soul traits and makes fear and hate determination somehow? What the fuck am I actually trying to process? Tell me this isn't a Mary Sue without telling me it's a Mary Sue. Now, I'm not hating just to be a hater. I will give credit where credit is due. The soundtrack composed by Nyx the Shield, Rush Garcia, Amila, and Naven Dove is actually a fucking banger. Some of them are remixes of Undertale soundtrack, but other times they create these amazing orchestral versions of the themes and can intertwine them into the fight scenes or create entirely new tracks themselves. Also, I will say that some of the fight scenes are kind of tough, at least when they're not traced. Like when Gaster rips Betty in half and beats the living shit out of her, that's tough, I can't lie. But that's where my praise ends, because while some of the fight scenes are definitely cool, I live by the philosophy that a fight scene is only truly good if the writing can carry its own weight, so a show doesn't have to solely rely on its visuals. The writing absolutely cannot hold itself up on its own 2 feet, because every time there is a plot hole or retcon, it is the equivalent of receiving a chiropractic adjustment from Hulk Hogan. So, where do I start? Guess I should probably start off with some questions from season 1. How is Frisk able to come back and block Chara's attack? Chara's taking Frisk's place in the fight, so doesn't that mean that only one of them can be present at a time since there is only one soul? Also, how does Frisk give Sans their soul when Chara is still present in the fight, using that soul? How does Gaster block the reset button? Why does Gaster come back and act like he didn't try to kill Sans and Frisk? How come Chara can't press the erase button they made? How does this vessel soul Chara gave Asriel contain determination when they ran out of determination? And how does Asriel have determination when he gives Frisk back their soul? Does this mean Chara had a soul when they came back? Because Glitchtale tells us that there can be only one person with determination at one time. The best answer I can give is just don't think about it. Now for season 2 problems. They start within the first 5 minutes. In the beginning of the season, we're told and shown how within a month, monsters have integrated themselves into human society. Gaster is being rewarded for his scientific breakthroughs and Undyne becomes a cop. We are told about the anti-monsters department and how they are against monsters on the surface. They don't do shit the entire time. We are told over and over that the AMD is a looming threat to monsters and their role in society. Yet, they don't try to enforce any anti-monster propaganda or even try to stop monsters from being members of society. There's absolutely zero injustices and hate shown to monsters in the show. They are given the same exact opportunities and rights as everyone else. Hell, to even show how little impact of the AMD even has over the show, Jessica is literally the only person a part of it that appears on screen. And after she announced it to the public to finally trust monsters, through the AMD speakers around the city, acting like this wasn't a one-sided beef, there is absolutely no mention of the AMD ever again. And even if she didn't announce anything, everyone would still be living at peace with each other and people would still be acting exactly the same as they were. Also, what was the AMD doing when monsters weren't weren't around. But you know what? At the heart of everything in the show, there are still hearts. The way some of the souls work in the show just doesn't make sense. Determination is portrayed as this haha I win bullshit go power, where if you have it, you are literally unstoppable. The nuance that determination had in Undertale was just removed for this show. Now, to counter determination, we have the soul of fear, which is pink, until it's retconned to be dark orange. Orange is the soul of bravery, and it's only pink because of the Bet Noir spell. So, quick question, why does this reverse spell of the bravery soul affect bravery more than it affects determination? Also, if you paid attention to a very large detail in the show, you realize that the soul of fear shouldn't have existed in the first place. In the fight against the original carrier of determination, this orange-haired woman has the soul of bravery. She loses a fight and therefore loses her soul trait. It is an established rule in Glitchtale that once you lose your soul trait, you can't use magic. So, to question my entire existence, if the orange-haired lady loses her magic abilities, how the did she manage to form the soul of fear with magic? There is no explanation for any of this. When I went to the wiki for information, it is just as bad at giving it to me as the show is. Also, how has no one thought that Betty was a monster in this show? Even though she says she isn't a human or a monster, when she starts going on her killing spree, she exclusively targets humans, despite wanting to kill both sides. And I shit you not, Sans and Alphys are the only two monsters to actually die. I feel like this would build tension between humans and monsters, because the average person will look at this and assume this is a monster attack, given how Betty clearly doesn't look like a normal person, and based on how many human casualties there were. Also, if this route was explored, maybe the AMD could have had more of a purpose to exist. I'm not a writer, but hell, it's something to use. Also, how are these soldiers trained to fight with their soul traits? It has been stated in the beginning of the show that soul magic hasn't been a thing since the monsters were sealed underground. Season 2 takes place after a month of them being on the surface, and we're shown scenes of people using magic even before the events of Undertale and after the barrier is sealed. We also see technology being made from soul traits. So how do you explain that these people were able to skillfully use their abilities, and how come we are shown characters using their powers when we are told that magic hasn't existed in 1,000 years? While we're still on the topic of soul traits, it is established that determination can defeat fear and vice versa. So why the was Gaster able to defeat Betty? Why the is Gaster stronger after Sans dies, when we are shown that he loses power if one of the Skelebros are dead? And why is everyone drawn with 4 fingers? Now, before I continue further into a state of psychosis, I want to talk about Sans. I said earlier that Sans remembering previous timelines makes sense within the context of the story because he had determination, but this concept is destroyed when Sans is resurrected. At this point in the story, Frisk swap places with Chara, which makes everyone's memories change to where Chara is in Frisk's place, which also destroys anything that was built up into the finale of season 1. But since Frisk in a sense never existed, Chara and the rest of the cast can't remember Frisk, but Sans implies that he can. Mind you, he was given a dose of determination from Frisk and Undyne, but even then, if Chara can't remember and they're the ones in control of the timeline, then how does Sans remember? Shit, how does anything that Frisk has done in the previous timeline still remain the same in Chara's new timeline if these two would have made drastically different decisions? Hell, we are even shown that if there was a decision that Frisk made that Chara wouldn't, the memory would be entirely erased. Everyone would still be in the underground, Azrael would still be Flowey, Gaster would have never came back, and the timeline probably would have been glitched. Again, this can tie back to how everything is Frisk's fault. But to wrap this whole thing up, you cannot just swap these two in and out of the show as you please if you're going to show that certain things wouldn't have happened because one didn't technically exist. Jesus Christ, I'm actually out of breath. So chat, what did we learn today? We learned that if you defend groomers, you're bound to write a shitty show.
Let's be real, you don't deserve an apology for being groomed.
So I guess for my official ranking of the show, I give it a 5 out of 10. I think the reason why me and so many people were attached to this show when we were younger was because we were so obsessed with Undertale that we were looking for any media to consume involving it, and unfortunately, Glitchtale was one of those things we ended up liking. Anyways, if you did enjoy the video, please do consider leaving a like and subscribing. I originally planned to get this video out in July, but life just got in the way, so I really couldn't do that. But whenever my next video is out, it will be quite different in terms of the kind of video I make, and it will also be a pretty important video because it will actually explain the future of this channel. Anyways, I'll see you all in the next one.